Hey, welcome guys. Today we are going to be painting and doing some decals on our new Panzer I from Tamiya. This is the new kit that came out late fall, early winter of 2024. We have it built up as of a couple of weeks ago now, and we have applied, as you can see, our paint and decals and our figure. Now we're going to go through in this video kind of step by step on how we got to this finished product. I will say my main goal of this was to make sure that it didn't end up too dark. When it comes to dark gray, German gray, even olive drab, if you watched one of my latest half track painting videos, same idea with the dark green. When you clear coat something, it makes it a lot darker, especially when it's a dark color to begin with. It gets really, really dark. So this was my attempt to make sure that that didn't happen. Now, as we do with most of my, at least tanks, we're going to prime it in Tamiya's NATO Black. It is a kind of grayed out, matte, very, very matte black that, yes, we want it to get into the panel lines and into the body of the vehicle, but also behind the wheels, behind where the tracks are going to go. This is where I think this color is used most effectively, because if we miss that, it'll just look like shadow effect. Or if the paint doesn't go heavy enough into those areas. Next, what we're going to do is we're going to go all the way to a light gray. And we're going to highlight basically the middle of the panels and really, all the big flat areas. Yes, we did touch some of the panel lines, but as you can see, we left them a little darker. I don't want this to look, all that stark. It's 1939, I believe the markings were from. It's probably a pretty new vehicle, hasn't really seen much combat. I think it just, this was from the Polish campaign, so I want this to look like it's parading through the city streets, and it's still a fresh new vehicle. Then, what we did was take a medium gray from Tamiya, and do the same thing. Just highlighting the middle of the panels. You can see I didn't spray behind the wheels because again, I want a shadowed effect behind the tracks and everything, behind the road wheels. But highlighting the main parts of the panels and still just leaving a tiny bit by the recessed panel lines and things. Then finally, we're going to do our German gray. So that's our fourth color, is going to be German gray with a decent amount of Tamiya's paint retarder, which if you haven't used it, it might be Tamiya's best product. I think it is, at least. It retails for about $5 online. It's really sold out everywhere all the time. Probably have to pay like $15 on eBay. I will say that's what I paid, and it's worth it. It's only the second jar I ever bought of it, and it lasts forever. So $15, so be it. In a couple of years, you won't even remember, and you'll still have probably most of the bottle. But I think it achieved exactly what I wanted it to achieve. It does look a lot lighter than German gray before the clear coat, which is a good thing because again, that clear coat's going to darken everything. But that paint retarder really gives it a really extended drying time, a self-leveling ability, and a much nicer finish overall. Next up, we are going to be painting our road wheels. And I do this by hand. I've always done it by hand with this $1 or $2 Tamiya brush that is, yes, very dirty and very old from all the paint water it sat in. But I can't find a better, softer, bristled brush that works. You can get it in the little 3-pack for like $5, and it'll last for a very long time. And those soft bristles will allow you to make a really nice straight line up against some of those heightened pieces, like against the road wheels. So it's just what I've always done. And I have used brushes much more expensive than that, and they don't work as well. So that's how I do it. And I'm doing it with Ammo by Miggs rubber tire Atom paint, which paints extremely well. I'm just not thrilled with it because it's more of a grayish road wheel color. I just went with it because it paints really, really well and it dries and coats really well. But I don't know. It got a little bit grayed out anyways. Moving on to dry brushing our guns here. First, painting them in flat black, and then dry brushing them. It's more of like a wet dry brush kind of combo that I do with Ammo by Meg's gunmetal color, their acrylic. I don't mind if a little bit more comes out than would on a normal, very dry brush. I just want it to be half black and half gunmetal. That's really the color I'm looking for that I think realistically represents what a weapon from that era would look like and what metal from that era looks like on weapons. Next up, we have this hose, as well as the little circular area on the inside of the upper hatch that we have to paint in rubber black. Now, you could leave this piece off if you wanted to, paint it separate. It would make painting it a whole lot easier. I had to go very, very slow here with minimal paint. Somehow managed not to overpaint, which I usually do. But I wanted to attach it to the vehicle because there are areas of it that are the German gray. And I just didn't want this very nice paint job to then have this one little, two little pieces be hand painted. Sometimes it is very noticeable, sometimes it's not. But that piece in the front's a little bit bigger than I usually hand brush. So I made the choice to do it. It's not overly difficult, and you don't have to go as far into where I was going if you don't want to. Once that sets up, I'm going to do the same on the top. See that's still drying there. And then get all of the tools and everything attached in the tracks. And then glue the top, to the lower part of the hull. As you can see, I'm using AK Interactive's paint markers on the left-hand side of the tank. I use the wood base color. Now, it is very, very yellow. I have used it on the tools, and when you put a nice wash on it, it dulls it down. It's not so yellow anymore. The box, I did a little experimenting. I bought the marker. It cost me money. I'm not going to not use it. And if I don't use it, it's just going to sit in my drawer forever because I won't throw it out because I spent money on it. So I'm going to experiment with it. It looks very stark right now, but it is what it is. And then we have our figure, which, again, all black, nice and easy figure to paint. Nothing too crazy about him. So if you're not big into figure painting, it's a really nice figure to put in your tank. You can almost see it there. I did probably 80% of the paint needed to cover the interior, the white, because that figure takes up most of the space, makes a shadow effect. Wasn't overly concerned with it. It's just enough to get the point across. Then we have clear coated in Tamiya's TS13, their gloss color, and we're starting with our decal application. Now, Tamiya's decals are always thick. These are really, really thick. They seemed thicker than normal. I don't know if it's just the kind of pastel ones that I've chosen here. There's two different marking options you could choose as well. But they felt like they were twice as thick as Tamiya decals are normally. Now, my trick for Tamiya decals in general is to get the water in your sink as hot as it'll go, where maybe you'd burn your hand if you put it under it. It's not boiling. It's going to allow the decals to come off much faster and much easier than it would with, let's say, like a room temperature water. It also, to me, ends up with the decal drying and conforming to some of those curves and panel lines and things a little bit better before we get into the mark fit stage. So I have everything ready to go on my bench. I go over to the sink, let it run for a minute or two, get it nice and hot, and then immediately start applying. If the water starts to cool to room temp, I'll go refill it and keep doing it that way. It's not, I don't think, quite as important on non-Tamiya decals, but it's definitely, I think, important when it comes to Tamiya's decals, and definitely these, because again, they're really, really thick. And then just making sure that we clean up, as you can see here, any excess water. We don't want water pooling anywhere. If you ever let a glass dry in your drying rack, it leaves water spots if you don't wipe it clean or wipe it dry. Minerals in your tap water and things will do that here as well. So making sure, and with the mark fit, same thing. We don't want anything drying there. Then, as you can see, we have the 104 decal that we're putting on here. This comes in 2 different pieces, which is nice for 2 reasons. One, because of the curvature of the turret, because it's such a small turret too, and there's a lot of curve there. It allows you to position them as they would actually appear, rather than just a straight line. They would be ever so slightly curved, right? So that's nice. The other thing is that, yes, the 1 and 0 are together, but there's very minimal carrier film between 1 and 0, just because they're 2 straight lines, right? But above the 4 and below the 4, there would be a lot of extra carrier film that Tamiya has saved us from having to try to hide in this instance. So that's very, very nice as well on these. The 4 has a little cutout, so you know exactly where it's supposed to go. On the right-hand side of the turret, it went on very, very easy and slotted in exactly where it should have. For whatever reason, on the left-hand side here, I had a little bit of trouble just lining it up. The cutout in the 4 isn't quite as pronounced, so I don't know, maybe it was just me. It kind of frustrated me for a minute there, but keep working with it and it will go on. I think it was probably user error. And then trying to get, some water on these decals without getting too much, so that you can keep moving them around. You don't, risk ripping them or anything. I am using tweezers and a combination of my brush there, just to try to be as gentle as possible. They are pretty thick again, so they probably won't rip, but we definitely don't want to rip decal here. And then in general, I see people use Q-tips to completely dry decals, kind of squeeze out some of that water and stuff. I actually don't do that. Main reason is because anytime I touch a Q-tip to the decal, it instantly dries the decal. It moves it a little bit, and then because it's dry, I can't get it back to where I want it to be. So what I do is I keep my brush that's in my left hand in a paper towel, and at the end here you'll see I come back with the dry brush and just soak up like the really excess water. Anything that drips down on those vertical lines, I'm going to dry that. But I do leave a little bit of water on there to air dry. Again, I see a lot of people able to do it where they don't, where the decal stays. For whatever reason, that just doesn't work perfectly for me. But never fear. That's what Tamiya Mark Fit Strong is for. You put that on, let it dry fully. Don't put it on and then come back 10 minutes and put more on. I find that it doesn't actually do anything, that second coat. The Mark Fit needs to make the decal wet, and then the decal needs to fully dry. So if you come back in like 45 minutes and the decal's fully dry, it'll look completely different than when you put the Mark Fit on there to begin with. Now, I probably did about 6 coats of Mark Fit on especially the area around the turret, because it's going, over panel lines and rivets and things like that. So you do need a little bit of extra, but that Mark Fit Strong is going to really push any water or air that's under that decal out of the decal. The only thing we want to watch for, again, is that it doesn't drip down and pool at the bottom, because it will leave some kind of deposit marks and things. So just check it every 5 to 10 minutes. Make sure that's not happening until it's dry enough that you're confident it won't drip. Once we have that done and the Mark Fit has dried to our liking and the decals are where we want them, I sprayed it with Tamiya's TS80, which has been known, yes, to eat decals. I've never had it happen on a Tamiya kit with TS80. I kind of feel like it's one of the reasons why their decals are thick. It's just their products work well together. I've used it on like cartograph decals and it's eaten them. So if you do use it, just be careful. I've been experimenting with other decals and clear coats, but for Tamiya's works perfect. I've never had a problem with it. Got our decals and everything and weathering done, very basic weathering on our figure, and got him attached into the fighting compartment there. So we are really done with this stage. If you have made it this far and you haven't already, I would please ask you to like and subscribe. On the next installment of at least this vehicle series, we will do a very basic weathering. So again, I envision, and if you see this, the pictures of the tank commander in this vehicle, this is obviously the stance, well, so they don't smash their chin on the turret if they go over a bump, but this is like the, when they were doing an exercise or a parade, this is how you see the commander in there. So imagine this rolling through the streets of Poland, which, yes, is sad, but based on the pictures you see, that's what it would be. So I'm not going to really beat up this vehicle. I'm not going to chip it a lot. I really want to focus on like 3 or 4 basic weathering techniques that just make it look a little bit more alive and a little bit more, detailed and things. So that's what's coming up in the next week or two. We'll get to that, but I appreciate you guys watching. I'll leave you with the tank for a couple extra seconds here, and we will see you on the next video.